You're on.
Okay, so today's topic is saving your life with wearable technology. We have a guest speaker, Ron Brown. He's a member of APCUG Speakers Bureau, and he also has his own website, Tech for Seniors. I have put that in the chat if you'd like to learn more about what he does there. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob and have him tell you a little bit about himself, what he does, and we'll have a great presentation.
You want me to start?
Yes, go for it.
All right. Let me just get my slideshow ready to go here. Great. How does that look? Can everyone see that okay?
Good.
Looks fine?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. The topic today is saving your life with wearable technology. And we will, I just wanted to notice on the bottom left, you'll see the website that you referred to. It's actually Tech for Senior. There's no S on the end.com. Our show we do on Monday is called Tech for Seniors with an S, but unfortunately that domain was taken. So there is no S on the senior. So that if you want to go and listen to part 1 or part 2, you can certainly go to that website and listen. All right. The goal of the presentation today is to keep this simple, is to teach you 2 common medical conditions that can incapacitation or stroke. How wearable technology can help you identify these conditions and seek medical help. Now, just a disclaimer on this, since I'm retired now for many years and I don't have medical malpractice anymore, these are not the views of any organization. It's not meant to be personal medical advice, and you should always check with your healthcare provider before changing any treatment plan. And the people in this presentation are fictitious and do not portray any members of our community. Now, I don't expect you to read this, but I've given this presentation to many clubs, and it was Superstition Sunrise Club in Mesa who I gave this presentation to, and one of the individuals followed through with my recommendations and was being monitored and was told to go to the hospital on an emergency basis and was admitted to ICU. And the cardiologist said had he not come in that night, he wouldn't have made it. So I got a very nice letter from the resort and from this individual as well, thanking because indeed his presentation saved his life. And so there probably will be more like that. So I think it is an important presentation. We're going to talk about monitoring, and we're going to talk about wearable technology. And the takeaway from this slide is that wearable technology is big business. If you go to Best Buy now, you'll see a large part of the store is all wearable technology. It will be the fastest growing electronics consumer sort of devices in the next few years. It's going to be huge, and we'll talk about why that's going to be. For example, if you look just in the smartwatch field, you'll see that the smartwatch shipments in the last quarter of 2019, the smartwatch only comprised 17.6% of the market. So the earwear, wristbands, and other things, and 29.5 million units were sold by Apple watches, and that was a 200% increase in the quarter for the same time the previous year. So big business, lots of stuff being sold, and Apple's making a lot of money. However, what you need to know is that there are actually 3 contenders in the market. Well, Apple is leading right now. We have Samsung, and we'll be talking about them today. They're biting at Apple's heels. And also, as you probably remember from last year, Google bought Fitbit for $2.1 billion. And there will be, many of you have Fitbits, I have a Fitbit, you probably will know that they make a lot of products, and I would suggest to you that all this is going to be changing very rapidly. The Fitbit line will be changing more into medical devices in this, and it's going to happen very quickly. And part of what we saw was this particular doctor was Shirbati was involved, and we're going to talk a little bit about AliveCore. It's a company in the United States that was involved in pioneering a lot of the technology that Apple uses. And she was one of the chief technologists, that, as well as being a physician, involved in designing this. And this, she's been hired away from AliveCore and now works for Google. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But you'll see, you're going to see big changes in the Fitbit line. Now, the interesting thing about the Fitbit line is you'll see that of course they make a whole line of watches. Now, what we're going to talk about today is heart monitoring and cardiac monitoring, and the heart rate and cardiac monitoring. Now, this is being well defined with the Apple Watch, and we'll certainly talk about that. But since Dr. Shirbati went with Google, she found out that Fitbit actually has the capability of doing some of the things that the Apple Watch does. So they then started a study, and you'll see that they are actually looking for people to do a heart study, an atrial fibrillation study, which we'll talk more about today, and that is with Google now. And I'm not sure, this is where you would join the study, and I'm not sure if the study is finalized yet. I forgot to look at that before coming on today, but they were still looking for people to participate in the study if you had a Fitbit. Now, those of you who listened to this talk earlier this year are really happy with me, because of course I talked you into participating in the Apple Heart Study, which is now closed, and you got a free Apple Watch 5 if you participated in the study. So that study is ongoing now, and this is an atrial fibrillation study, and they are indeed, that study is closed. So what we're going to talk about is my fictitious patient who lives where I live at Silver Ridge Resort in Mesa, Arizona. And Mary's a 74-year-old widowed lady who lives full-time at Silver Ridge Resort, and that's the entrance to our resort. Now, I just want to go over Mary's history. Mary has lived here for 7 years at the resort, and she's wonderful. Everybody loves Mary. Everybody has a Mary in their life. She lives by herself in a park model with an Arizona room, and she has a very good friend across the street who she walks with every morning at 9 a.m. And that's Alice. And Alice and Mary walk around the perimeter of Silver Ridge and then have a cup of tea. Mary's pretty active. I don't know about your place, but down where I am, everyone plays pickleball. Pickleball is crazy. Lots of people play pickleball. So Mary even plays some pickleball. So she's quite active. And of course, her highlight of the whole year is our Monday morning computer meetings at SilverCon CTC, right? Of course, I had to put that in. I made this up. So that's a literary license, we call it. Now, Mary has been widowed for 12 years. She has a daughter, Meg, who's an accountant and lives in Palm Desert, but she comes to visit once a month. Mary has pretty good computer skills, and she Skypes with Meg, and Mary doesn't drive anymore and uses Uber for transportation. Now, Mary has pretty good health. She sees her family doctor is Dr. Jones, and she sees him about twice a year. She's a little bit overweight, and she has a bit of blood pressure, and so she's on some mild blood pressure pill. But other than that, she's doing really well. Now, on July 2nd, Mary was walking home from the mailroom and felt a little bit lightheaded. I don't know, it's lightheaded and dizzy spells are common with seniors. She had no chest pain or palpitation, and she sat down on the grass, and you'll see the grass down by the road there. And this is as you're walking back from the mailroom. John came along in the golf cart. Everyone has golf carts at our resort, and picked her up, and he took her home. She felt fine. However, in talking with her doctor or her daughter, she made an appointment to see Dr. Jones the following day. Now, you know this is made up because, of course, who gets to see their doctor the next day when they call for an appointment, right? But anyway, well, we'll continue on with that. So she goes in to see Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones checks her over. Everything is fine. Her blood pressure and pulse are okay, and there's really nothing wrong. Since this episode only happened and it was only a few seconds, and she just felt dizzy for a little period of time, they decided not to do anything about it, and they just keep an eye on things. Then a little bit later on July 17th, Mary was cooking supper and she felt similar lightheadedness, and it lasted for about 30 minutes. And so then she went and she didn't have any chest pain or palpitations, but she sat in her lazy boy chair. She again made an appointment to see Dr. Jones the next day, and he said he couldn't find anything wrong with her. Everything was fine again. So Mary, but he said, since it was her second event, he said, we're going to send you for some testing, and we're going to monitor your heart, and we're going to do a bunch of things. So Mary said that would be fine, but she wanted to do it the following week because Meg was coming on Friday for dinner. So that night, on Wednesday at 2:30 in the morning, Mary got out of bed and to pee. And when she was getting off the toilet, she had another dizzy attack, and she fell to the floor, and she heard a terrible crack in her right hip. Now, she was in terrible pain, and she was wedged between the shower and the toilet. She couldn't move, and she called for help, but no one came. Now, this is a common problem because, of course, there is nobody in July at Silver Ridge Resort. Silver Ridge Resort is a resort that's most people are there in the wintertime. So this creates a huge problem because there's nobody there in the summer. So Alice found Mary around 9 o'clock the next morning. And when the ambulance arrived, Mary was cold. She had a pulse of 46, and her blood pressure was 80/60, so she was in shock. On arrival to Banner Hospital, she had a temporary pacemaker put in. She was then transferred to ICU, where she was stabilized and had a permanent pacemaker. And she had her hip repaired, and to the delight of everyone, Mary had an uneventful recovery. Now she's back at Silver Ridge, but she has given up pickleball. So what was Mary's diagnosis? What could Mary have done to be better prepared? And what were the clues in her history that could be expanded on? Some of these we're going to discuss today. Others will be in part 2. Now, what was wrong? Let's talk a little bit about hearts. This is where I get to put my doctor's hat on. And there are actually 4 things that can go wrong with your heart. The 3 things that you see here today, we're not going to talk about these. If you look at the bottom right-hand side, you'll see where your arteries get plugged up. And this is sometimes you need stents, sometimes you need to take cholesterol medicine, sometimes you need bypass surgery. But we're not going to talk about that. That wasn't Mary's problem. On the left-hand side, with my nice little pulsating heart, it reminds us that there are 4 valves in the heart. And sometimes you need a valve job just like your car. But that's not what we're going to talk about. That's not what was Mary's problem. Sometimes, also, if you look at the top left slide, you'll see that there's an infection of the heart muscle that can cause heart damage. This actually is a big problem now with COVID-19, because the virus actually can attack the heart muscle. But that's not what we're going to talk about, and that's not what Mary's problem was. What we are going to talk about, though, is the electrical conduction system of the heart. Now, I know that there are members of your club like John and Bob, and these guys are really smart. I think you all are a real smart group. So I'm going to teach you all about the electrical conduction system of a heart in 30 seconds. Now, we teach medical students, usually it takes them a year to figure this out, but I know you can do it in 30 seconds. All you need to really know is if you look on the right side here, you'll see that that is a circuit breaker in your house. And you know that a circuit breaker either can be turned on or turned off. Excuse me. So and your heart has 2 circuit breakers in it. And we're only going to talk about the first circuit breaker, which is the one you'll see is called circuit breaker number 1. So if we turn the circuit breaker off, guess what? Your heart stops, okay? If we turn your circuit breaker back on, your heart would stop, and it can also fail in the on position, which would mean you would have too rapid a heart. So if you look then, we have the main, you see the red line coming up here. That is the main wiring coming into your heart. And you will see, then you see circuit breaker number 1, and this either can fail in the open or closed position. And that's all you need to know, folks. That's what we take a whole year to teach medical students. Either fail in the closed or fail in the open position. And we're going to talk about why that's significant in a minute. All right. Now, as seniors, it's important that we know what your pulse is. Is your pulse too slow, or is your pulse too fast? And this is important to figure this out. Now, of course, you can measure your pulse. You can actually feel your pulse. But as you see, the seniors up here on the top left have some sort of devices on their wrist that actually record that. But it is really important that we know if your pulse, what your pulse is, and if it's too fast or too slow. So we need to monitor your pulse. Now, again, there are, you can, as I said in the top left here, you can see that you can actually take your pulse, but most people now will use some sort of device to monitor your pulse. And there are lots of different devices. The Apple Watch, of course, is one of them. And there's the Fitbit, Garmin, and we'll be talking about a bunch of those today. And these devices all will record your pulse. So this is really, really important. These are called activity trackers, and the activity trackers do a lot of things, but I've distilled this down into really why would I recommend for seniors these devices. And there certainly is your, we're going to talk today about your pulse, and in part 2 we talk about the accelerometer for falls and emergency notification. All right, let's talk a little bit about what happens if your pacemaker fails in the closed position. What happens if it flips off? And this is where your heart rate really slows down. And this is what happened with Mary, is that she had a problem with her heart that required a pacemaker, and that's because circuit breaker number 1 failed. Now, I know a lot of you drive and have cars, and maybe in the past you've had some electrical problems and tried to get it fixed. And trying to diagnose electrical problems in cars has 2 problems. Number 1, it takes a lot of time, and number 2, it costs a lot of money. And most people get electrical problems in their car, sell the car and get a new one. Now, the problem, it's the same problem with hearts, is when your pacemaker fails in the closed position and it slows your heart rate down, it can be intermittent and very difficult to diagnose. In fact, a lot of times seniors go around and they see doctor after doctor after doctor, and it takes a while before it comes to light because it's an intermittent problem. Now, on this situation, I wanted you to look at this diagram here, and we will show you, this is an incidence of cardiac pacemaker insertion by age group. And what I want you to look here is I want you to look and say, okay, is there anybody in this room today that's over the age of 60? Well, look what happens to the graph after the age of 60. The chances of you requiring a pacemaker by the time you get to be 85 is quite significant, somewhere around 70%. So just as you get your cataracts repaired or taken out, just as you get knee replacements, joint replacements, the pacemaker number 1 fails at the same rate. So this is very common to get pacemakers. The problem is, in Mary's situation, she almost died. She didn't die because she needed a pacemaker. She died because she had a fall. She was by herself, and she got very hypothermic and all sorts of problems related to that. So we want to be able to pick up a slow heart rate early on and be able to get you treatment and get a pacemaker in you before you break your hip, before you run your car into a tree, before you cause problems. And just remember how common this is, okay? Now, guess what? The Apple Watch actually alerts you if you have a slow heart rate. It will tell you right on the dial. It will tell you if you have a slow heart rate. Now, what happens if your heart is beating too fast? Suppose, for example, pacemaker number 1 fails in the open position. Remember, it can fail in the close or it can fail in the open. Then you get a very rapid heartbeat, and it goes between 140 and 180, and your heart has what we call palpitations. And that, folks, that's again pacemaker number 1. And that means you have atrial fibrillation. Now, you may not know what atrial fibrillation is, or you may not have heard of it, but it is indeed a common condition that we have as we get over the age of 60. And one of the big problems with atrial fibrillation is it's a major cause of stroke. And I'm having a lot of fun being a senior. The last thing I want is to have a stroke. And this is when pacemaker 1 fails in the open position. So guess what? The incidence is all bad news. I'm sorry. Look at age 60 again and look at the graph of incidence of atrial fibrillation as we get older. In fact, it will parallel the pacemaker insertion because it's the same problem. It's the same pacemaker number 1, either fails in the open or it fails in the closed position. So atrial fibrillation is a very common condition over the age of 60. And this is a major factor in strokes. So again, we want to prevent strokes from happening. And so we want to diagnose atrial fibrillation in because it's a common condition. And many times when I do rounds at the hospital and I stood around the bed and the family's looking at me as their dad had a bad stroke, they look at me and say, well, why did he have a stroke? And most oftentimes it was undiagnosed atrial fibrillation. Well, you're not going to believe this, but the Apple Watch tells you if you have atrial fibrillation. It will actually notify you. It monitors your heart, and it will tell you if your heart is going too slow, or it will tell you if it's going too fast. So 2 or 3 years ago, when Apple actually did the study, the original study, they did it through Stanford University, and they did this big Apple heart study to diagnose atrial fibrillation, and they found out that the Apple Watch does it very well. It's very accurate and precise. So I wanted to talk a little bit about ECGs. We're going to talk about that because the Apple Watch does that as well. Now, if you look up here on the right-hand side, you'll see a very perplexing looking man. And this picture is the first ECG machine, and that was in 1860. Now, folks, in 1860, they were still in Europe burning witches at the stake. So let me sort of say, it's surprising they didn't burn the doctor. Can you imagine in 1860 having going to a device like this and having your right hand in a bucket of water, your left hand in a bucket of water, and your left foot in a bucket of water, and being hooked to this contraption? You would have thought for sure that you were going to die. Well, that's because very early on in medicine, we knew that studying the electrical characteristics of the heart gives us a lot of information. And if you look over here to the left, you've probably been to the hospital and you may have had an electrocardiogram. And that's when they put all these little sticky things on you, and then it produces something like this in the bottom left-hand corner, which is called an ECG. Now, why is this important? Well, because we can tell what your heart's done in the past with an ECG. We know the history of your heart. Have you been taking your blood pressure medicine? We can tell that by looking at an ECG. We can tell the present condition of your heart. You come to the emergency department, you have chest pain. We can tell if you're having a heart attack by doing an ECG. And we can also tell the future of your heart and predict the value of what's happening to it, again, through an ECG. So past, present, and future, we can actually get a lot of information doing this test. And they figured that out back in 1860. Guess what? The Apple Watch actually does an ECG. So if you look at the top right-hand picture here, you'll see his index finger is pushing on the crown of the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch then records the ECG. It goes into the iPhone and is stored as a PDF file. And at the bottom right-hand corner, you will see a copy of the ECG that was done. This was an actual ECG done on a friend of mine. I don't have an iPhone, but he did this ECG. What's interesting about the ECG, and let's see if we can bring this up and make it a little bigger. The ECG actually does an interpretation as well. This ECG does not show any signs of atrial fibrillation. So why is this important? Well, if you're out and you're a bit dizzy and you're having some trouble and you push that button and it records the ECG and it doesn't capture atrial fibrillation, when you go in to see your doctor, that's helpful because he then can rule out one of the common problems of a dizzy spell. Now, the ECG is not an ECG that we do at the hospital. The ECG is only going to really tell if your heart's going too fast or too slow, or if you have atrial fibrillation. As you see here, this is an actual ECG that we do in the hospital, which is a lot more complicated than the one on your watch. Now, and just to remind everybody, of course, you have to actually have an iPhone to work with the watch. The ECG function on the watch will not work as a standalone. You need the iPhone to be had along with the watch. Again, this is what it looks like. Your watch will tell you exactly what's going on and if you have atrial fibrillation. Now, of course, this is of great significance, and many healthcare plans now identify this and will actually pay or subsidize for the Apple Watch. I'm sorry, these are probably dated slides. These were taken, I made these about 6 months ago, and at this time, these were the companies that were providing subsidy or paying for the Apple Watch. Of course, in Mary's case, if Mary had had an Apple Watch, if she had been able to, when she first sat down on that grass, if she had taken her ECG and saw that her pulse actually was 40, then she could have notified Dr. Jones when she saw him the next day, and he would have sent her right to the hospital for a pacemaker, right? That's diagnostic of needing a pacemaker. So, and that would have saved a lot of money to the healthcare provider. So that's why they're interested in getting the watch out there for you. I wanted just to show you, this is a new slide that I've added to the presentation, and it's a bit confusing. When we talk about the watch as a medical device, if you are going to record or store medical information on a device, then it has to be reviewed and approved by the FDA. And if you look here, there are many things that a smartwatch will do, but not all of those have to be approved. And what has to be approved by the FDA, of course, is the pulse and atrial fibrillation. Oh, level 2. Level 1 is stuff like ECG machines, respirators, and things like that would be a level 1. But the atrial fibrillation part of the watch falls in level 2. So it has to be approved by the FDA. Now, and in fact, every country that the watch has this application working on. So, and Apple, of course, that's why Apple, they're about 2 or 3 years ahead of everyone, because they've gone around the world and had their watch approved in all the countries way before everybody else. Samsung, the Watch 3, which was just released August 5th, I'm happy to tell you that it does indeed have the FDA approval now for atrial fibrillation monitoring. So that, as I speak, as this conference is going on, they are starting to turn on the ECG atrial fibrillation on the Samsung product. Also, the next one coming out will be blood pressure monitoring or recording. This is not available on the Apple Watch, but it is available on the Samsung Watch 3. Again, it's been approved in South Korea and it's pending approval with the FDA, but the Watch 3 will be able to do that. Now, the fall detection and emergency notification, we're not going to talk about that here. That's in the part 2, but this is nothing to do with medical diagnosis. So this does not require FDA approval. So all the watches can certainly have these features on and does not require FDA approval. I put blood sugar on here. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but we can now, from the watch, do a blood sugar. There's a number of companies now that have filed for patents, and I would expect within another year, we will see the watch being able to do a bloodless blood sugar, and that will be the holy grail. This is the, now we've talked a lot about the Apple Watch. This is the Samsung Galaxy Active 2. This has been out for a year and is about $100 cheaper than the new watch that just came out. It's been a bit of a problem because they haven't been able to get the FDA approval for the cardiac monitoring atrial fibrillation, but this has now happened. So this watch as well should have the atrial fibrillation turned on. I don't know why they still don't have the fall detection on this one going, but it's capable of it, but hopefully they will get that done. This is the Apple watch killer, or that's nipping at their heels. This is the Samsung Watch 3, which released on August 5th, just a couple of weeks ago. I watched the virtual announcement of this and all the features. This is about $400 at Best Buy. You can purchase it now. This does atrial fibrillation monitoring, and it is available, and you can use it with an iPhone or an Android phone. So remember, the Apple Watch is only with the Apple products, but this can be used with either of them. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the company called AliveCar. Remember, I talked about that originally. You remember Dr. Sherbati got hired away. This company was formed by Dr. Albert and has been around for a number of years, probably I think over 10 years in the United States. They formed a lot of the technology that has been used, and they have a product out which allows you to monitor your pulse and look for atrial fibrillation. And I want to just show you this little video now and how this works. So when I give this presentation in person to various groups, I have this device, I carry it with me, and I say, all right, afterwards, who wants their ECG done? This one resort I was at, we had about 30 people come up afterwards and say, gee, I'd like you to do my ECG. Out of the 30 people, we picked 3 people up with undiagnosed atrial fibrillation. And one fella came and he said that he was feeling lightheaded. We did his ECG and his pulse was 40. I sent him to the emergency department in an ambulance. So this is a device that is $99 on Amazon. it's a bit hard to find right now because COVID-19 also is causing cardiac problems, and a lot of the cardiologists are recommending this for cardiac monitoring. It's a small device. It can fit on a keychain. It's only $99, and it will interpret your ECG for you. It'll tell you exactly what the Apple Watch does, so you don't actually have to spend all the money on an iPhone and buy an Apple Watch as well. This will do exactly what I showed you, and it's $99. So these devices have been around. It's common. I'll show you mine afterwards. I bought it at Best Buy, and again, this is the device. This is the my ECG on my device. This is exactly what it looks like. I did my own ECG. It stores it again as a PDF file, and you'll see that fortunately my analysis was normal. I was not, and my heart rate was 87, and it was a normal recording. There was no atrial fibrillation there, and so that's what it looks like, and that's what the device can do. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today is, you're probably all thinking, just a minute now, this gets a little bit complicated because each device has to be approved by each country to make this all work. This is going to get a little bit complicated. So AliveCor decided that they would do something a little bit different. They have an app, and the app is called Cardiogram, and it's available as an Android app or an iOS app as well. So it works on Apple iPhones, and it works on Android phones, and it's an app you download and you install on your phone, and it connects to any activity tracker. So whether you have Garmin, whether you have a Fitbit, or whatever tracker you have or monitor, it links into that, and it takes up the data, and it sends the data to a big computer in the United States where they monitor all this stuff, and it uses artificial intelligence to find out if you have any problems like atrial fibrillation or into something like that. And then it forms a partnership with your doctor or your HMO, and will actually send them the results instantly to if you're in trouble or need help. And this service is around $3 or $4 a month. So it's very reasonably priced, and I've signed up for it as well. And here's, I did get a notification. This occurred about a year ago, and this is what happens. This is, if you look over on the left-hand side here, this is some of the monitoring they did, and they found that you'll see here in the orange, if you see the spike, the large spikes on the left-hand side. Let me see if I can just blow this up a bit for you. There you go. You'll see just after 6 a.m. you'll see this orange really high level of activity with my heart. And so they wondered what I was doing and if I was in problems. So they send a notification. Now, what would a 67-year-old senior be doing at 6:30 in the morning? And the answer to that, of course, would be playing golf. And so I play my 9-hole group, and I was out walking around the golf course, and of course my heart was pumping a little bit harder. Now, had I been at home, had I had chest pain or shortness of breath, I could have been in trouble. So anyway, I let them know that that was fine and I was okay, and everything was copacetic. This is the service that the fella at the very beginning when I was talking used, and they notified him about his problem, and he went to the emergency department. And this is what saved his life, this particular app and the monitoring that they did. So this is a very good service. Now, the holy grail, cardiac monitoring is great. We're going to save lives, we're going to save strokes, but where we're going to make the big investment is going to be in the management of diabetes. And this occurred in January of this year, and this was the research, Samsung's research group, and they used Samsung's Advanced Institute of Technology, SATE, and MIT, and they came up with the answer to the puzzle. And they used this machine called a Raman spectroscopy. And what this machine does is it is able to accurately measure your blood sugar without poking you, and it does it through the skin as the watch technology will do that. Now this, and I said this about 6 months ago when this came out, it's a race now to miniaturize this and put it into a watch, and this will revolutionize the treatment of diabetes and make the companies that provide these devices very, very wealthy, because this is will be the future management of diabetes. And so this is going to occur quickly, and this is in the next year. I'm sure we'll see these devices out. All right, let's go back over again and just review. We've talked about today, you should all know about a slow heartbeat, and that you need to know about that. And that requires a pacemaker, and you should also know about a very rapid heartbeat, which of course is atrial fibrillation. I want you just to remember, as you take away from the information from this, is that if you are over the age of 60, look at the graph and look at what's going to happen. We don't want you driving down the highway, running into somebody, or going through town and passing out at the wheel and running your car into a restaurant. We don't want you being like Mary, laying on the floor, not being able to get help. So remember, this is a common condition as we get over 60. I want you to also remember atrial fibrillation. I want you to remember age 60. I want you to remember that graph, and we don't want a stroke. Strokes are bad news. You probably will lose your ability to drive. You may require a long-term care. You may have to sell your house. Lots of big problems. In all my stroke victims I took care of, if I said, had you ever bought a $500 watch, we could have prevented all this, nobody would have ever said, I don't want that. In fact, they would have paid any amount of money to get their life back. So I think this is all very worthwhile. How could Mary have been better prepared to tackle this? And that is going to be in part 2. And I encourage you to have me back, and I will talk to you about part 2. And we look at home devices and how you can actually make your house safer for the senior. Now, one of the people, I gave this talk, and someone emailed me this and said, you know, Doc, you know what the moral of the story is? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. And with that, I'm going to open it and stop sharing, and I will be open for any questions that you might have.
Bob?
Ron, I have a particular interest in the blood sugar portion of this, since I'm a diabetic, and of course I already have the right watch. Where do I get more information? Do you know?
Which watch do you have, Bob?
The Amazon. I have the 2, not the 3.
You have the Active 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you had any software updates this week on the watch?
Not that I know of, no.
Because I know they're updating all of them now, so you should be able to. There should be an update coming through on the watch, because that watch now you got to remember the blood sugar has not been done yet, right? We're talking about atrial fibrillation monitoring. That's what is being turned on, and also and they still haven't got that fall detection, because that watch also does fall detection. I don't know why they haven't got that turned on, but for sure the atrial fibrillation is being turned on as we speak, and that watch should get the update. And you should be able to do that. And I would assume it would be this week. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't. They're probably phasing it in. Now, the blood sugar monitoring is another whole topic, and that's going to be that's not none of these devices are capable of blood sugar monitoring yet. That will be a new watch and a new technology that will be probably another year.
Okay, so just keep my eye open for it.
Oh yeah, this is big. This is big, and
Yep.
I'm sure Apple has got to be putting all their resources into this. It's just going to be such a huge thing. So I expected the watch. I sort of thought maybe 6 would have it, 5 didn't have it. Either 6 or 7, I'm sure will have it. But you got to get it right. The problem with blood sugar monitoring is you've got to get it right, and you don't want to put something out that isn't quite there yet. So but it's going to come quickly.
Juanita, you had your hand up next.
I did have a question. I don't have an Apple Watch. I do have an Apple iPad and an Apple phone. My devices are probably over 5 years old. Will this, if I buy an Apple Watch, will they be compatible with an older phone?
What phone is it? What do you know?
It's 5 years old. It's probably an Apple 5 or 6.
I think it's got to be now that is known for sure. It's a 6 or 7. So I don't think you'd have to check. Apple knows that, and it will tell you that. And I've been told that before, but it may be the 6 or 7. I'm not sure.
I think it's a
say it's a
6S,
6.
Juanita. Not the 6, but the 6S has the latest software updates.
Yeah, so you'd have to look at that, but for sure you'd want to make sure that your phone was compatible. But you for sure. Now my position is this: I think, and here's 45% of the people in the United States own an iPhone. Like that's really crazy, right? Like 45% of the people don't use Apple iOS. They use but anyway, but a lot of people own iPhones. My personal feeling is if you own an iPhone, you should have an Apple Watch. They're just that good, and the monitoring is there. And I think it's you should have it. If you don't own an iPhone, am I going to do it? No, I don't think so. I think if you don't own an iPhone and you're not in the Apple ecosphere, I think I'm going to go, I personally am going to buy the Samsung Watch 3. I'm not an Apple person. I don't have an iPhone. I'm just not. And so, but lots of people are. So I'm certainly going to buy, my watch will be the Samsung Watch 3 that was just released, and I'm looking at that. They're just so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they're so expensive. So anyway, that's life. But I still think the value is there. But if you do have an iPhone, and you are in the iPhone sort of ecosystem, then for sure you should have an Apple Watch. That's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
I just bought this last year, and I can't see spending $400. And what do I do with this?
Well, yeah, now the difference between the Active 2 and the Active 2 will still probably work for another couple of years. I think it's a great watch, and it's $125 cheaper than the Watch 3 that was just released. So yeah, it should work fine. I mean, there are a few features that the Watch 3 has that the Active 2 doesn't, but so what? So they should turn the software on, and that it'll work fine for you. I don't think that that's a problem. But of course, as everything, when the blood sugar monitoring comes out, that will be yet another watch, and it will be a little bit more money. But on the other hand, diabetes is an expensive disease, and to do your finger pricking and all the testing that is required often is several $1,000s a year, and that will probably all go away. I would expect that even the insurance companies will all pay for these devices, because it's going to cut down. It's going to change the amount we have to pay in diabetes for blood sugar monitoring. And all these fingerprint stuff, all these glucometers, that's all going to go away, because you'll just wear the watch, right? You don't have to do any of that anymore. So that's all going to change.
They'll also be able to monitor and be able to advise and prevent some of the diseases that are part of diabetes, only because you're now constantly monitored. So
Exactly.
it's really fabulous.
Yep.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I walked away from the iPad for a minute when you had the slide up for the insurances. I did not see Medical Mutual, and that's what I have.
You know, I do not. These were just three that I picked up. You know, you need to call them and say, hey, you know, I was listening to a talk on, you know, Apple Watch and blah, 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 and then say, do you subsidize or pay for that? I think you just have to phone your insurance because it changes all the time. And
Okay.
I don't, you know, I just don't know. You'd have to phone them and ask them.
Okay, thank you.
And I can't see everybody's screen, so if someone maybe just speak up if you have a question.
Well, Ira and Gregory both unmuted. Do you gentlemen have questions?
Well, go ahead, Nancy.
I'm always worried when I don't have any questions is did I cover the topic so well that nobody has any questions, or did nobody understand anything I said for the whole presentation? So I don't know. I don't know what's with no questions. That's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Well, to make you feel better, Ron, I went to Apple's website and added an Apple Watch to my cart and said, do I really need to buy this? But I want it now.
You know, it's very interesting because it's a very powerful talk, and it's not uncommon. One resort I gave this at, 3 people came up afterwards and said they'd already ordered it. And in the middle of my presentation, they'd gone on Best Buy's website and they'd already booked the watch and they were picking it up on the way home. All right. So
Ron,
Three
Nancy Grauer here. Can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay, if you buy a Samsung Watch 3
Mhm.
and it does all this recording and you don't have a phone, is it just recorded and saved on your watch?
No, you have to have a smartphone.
You have to work all of these things with
Yes.
a smartphone.
It all works through the app on a smartphone. So
Okay.
you have to have a smartphone. Now, the nice thing about the Watch 3 is that it works on Apple and Android phones. Now, I would make sure, again, you want to make sure, and what you need to talk to probably Best Buy about is what phone and what software on the phone will work, because there's obviously going to be what version of Android will it pair with? Will it pair with Android 10 for sure, but will it pair with Android 6? I don't know, and that's something that because the watch just is so new, before you go and buy it, you would want to check that out. But having said that, Best Buy has a 2-week money-back guarantee that you can take it back if it doesn't work. So I mean, you could always do that. But you will need a watch for this to work with. And part of the problem is the ECG is actually stored on the phone, and a lot of the information is moved from the phone to the watch to the phone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? I did have a question. The Android phone you were talking about, I have an LG, which I've had other things not work on. You know anything about that?
Sorry, the question was you have an LG phone?
Yes.
How old's the phone?
About 2 years.
Yeah, so it's probably, again, if you were interested in the watch, then you would need to specifically, probably Best Buy would be would have that information, and or I'm sure Samsung's website would, because you want to make sure that it would pair with the phone, right? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, I bought hearing aids and they don't.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, of course, and all the advertising and everything, you know, that they did with these when it came out, people are all using the Samsung S20 phone, right? Which is like a $1,200 phone. But in fact, you don't have to have a Samsung phone. Any Android phone should work, but I just don't know what version of Android we would need.
Hello, Doc. Can you hear me?
I can.
Well, good. Thank you. My name's Ira and La Follette. I don't know if you see me or not, but anyway, I've got a cellular phone. You know, you see it advertised on TV, cellular for old people, cellular, and it's an Android. But will it be able to do any of that if I get the app?
You know, I just don't know the answer to that. How long have you had the phone?
Oh, I've had it now for about, it's probably about 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it all would depend on what version of, do you know what version of Android operating system you're using?
Yeah, well, hold on a minute. I can give it to you. Go ahead. I mean, I'll just give it to you right now. We'll go to settings. Wait a minute.
While he's doing that, I want to remind you, if you have questions, I muted everybody, so please unmute yourself. We're not ignoring you. We just can't hear you.
Or see you.
Yeah, and if you can't talk, chat, because I'm putting stuff in the chat for you guys. Ask the questions there. I'll monitor it.
My model number is a Model E4 Plus. It's an Android version 7.11.
Yeah, you see, that's an older version.
Also, it won't do it.
I doubt it. And the other problem that you have is with the older versions of Android is the Bluetooth version is old as well, because it's usually when your Android operating system is updated, so is the Bluetooth version as well. And so I really suspect that's too old.
Now, what I do have is that little finger pick at home that I check my heart rate and my pulse. You know, you stick it in there like for COVID-19 to see if you're okay, if you're breathing. Right. I do have that.
Right.
And check that every so often. You know, make sure I'm healthy and okay. That has nothing to do with the fibrillation.
Yeah. So let me I don't know if you can see this.
I can see it.
Can you guys see this? Or is there you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
That little pad you have with both fingers on each side.
So this
is spotlighted your video, so everybody should see it full screen now.
So this is the device, the little device that I showed you in the movie there, and this is what and again, this is a great device. It's $99, and you know you can use it. It's and it does an ECG, and it tells you if you have atrial fibrillation. So if you have a little dizzy spell, you just put your 2 fingers on here, and it'll do it for you. So this is a good way if you don't have a smartphone and you're concerned. $99, and it's available on Amazon, delivered today. You know, like, it's pretty good deal. And don't forget the other thing that I know we keep talking about the Apple Watch, but the Cardiogram app is really great. $3, you know, $3 a month to have your heart monitored, and it's great too. So there's other things other than spending a huge amount of money to do that, because there's other options.
Okay.
Hey Ron, I just checked Amazon, and those are at $89 now, and you get one Tuesday if you need one.
$89.
Yep.
$89, you get one by Tuesday.
Excellent. Now, do they have them in stock?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
What's the name of them? What's the name of it?
It's called Cardia Mobile.
Cardio Mobile. Okay.
Cardia, CARDIA Mobile. And I don't know if you can see. You see the box?
Yes.
That's what the box looks like that it comes in.
But you do need a smartphone in order.
No.
No,
Yes,
he's saying I don't.
Yes, you.
No. You need it.
You need the app. You need the app on the smartphone.
So it won't work for my cellular then? No.
You know, well, you know, that's a good question. You have version 7. It might. There's nothing really technologically, it would be if the Bluetooth would pair, and you know, give it a try. I wouldn't order it on Amazon. Go down to Best Buy and get it, and then try
That way
it.
I can take it back if it doesn't work.
Yeah, take it back to Best Buy if
Okay.
it doesn't work.
Hey,
Okay.
Ron, we have a question in chat, but before I do that, James, you found it on Amazon? Do you know how to paste the link in chat? Or if you could email it to us, we'll send it out. That's okay. We can find it.
They advertise it now for $89. It says 99 and it has a slash through it, and it's 89. It has been that way for a couple of months.
As I said, part of COVID-19 is it affects the heart, and it can actually cause heart problems. And so a lot of cardiologists are using this for monitoring. People go home, they get into these weird rhythms with their heart. And so they're using, a lot of cardiologists are recommending this and sending it home. So it's sometimes it's hard to find, you know, because it gets sold out, but that's great. That's great. $89. Good deal.
So the question in chat was from Terry. How does that compare to the AliveCore Cardia Mobile 6L FDA cleared wireless 6 lead?
That must be a new one. Now this is a single lead, so the 6 lead would give you a lot more information. That's probably the one where it actually sits on your knee. So we need yet a third. We need a third point to take to make it work. So you actually put it on your knee, and then you take both fingers. So it's a different device than this, right? There's a pad on the bottom here that connects on the skin of your knee. So you put it on your knee, and then you take your 2 fingers on the right and your 2 fingers on your left, and that gives you 6 leads, which is it. The only advantage to that is you're going to get a lot more information, but you're going to have to send it to a doctor to have it interpreted, right? It's not going to help you anymore, but you know, it would certainly be that information would be a lot of would be really good for your physician, because of course and that's one of the options on the which is cool about this device from Cardia Mobile, is one of the options they have is instant interpretation by a board certified cardiologist. You have to pay for that, but you can actually take it with this, and once it goes on the app on your phone, you can then click the button and immediately it goes out to whoever, and a board certified cardiologist reads it. Now that's pretty cool. I mean, whatever the advantages that would be, but it's but certainly that's available as part of that device.
Harry also pointed out that the 6L model is only $50 more.
Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure, unless you have a relationship. If you didn't have any problems and you just wanted this to maybe keep an eye on, if you have atrial fibrillation, if you had a little dizzy spell, then I don't think it's worth spending the extra money, okay? Because it's not going to help you in any specific way. Now, if you had a heart problem and you were working with a cardiologist, then yes, maybe that would be better, because it's going to give him a lot more information, right? So, I mean, it just depends how you're going to use it.
So Doc, let me ask you again here. On that app that you were talking about, you don't use the app. You go to you go to your Bluetooth and put it on and see if it connects with the Bluetooth.
It'll do that all for you. You would just install the app on your phone.
Okay, what's the name of the app is what I'm trying to figure out.
It would be the Cardiogram app. It'll tell you exactly. When you buy it, it's on the box. It tells you, it'll be in the, do you have an Android phone? So you go to the Play Store, and just go to the Play Store, and
I'll see if it's in there now.
Yeah, it's in the Play Store. It'll be in the Play Store.
Okay, thank you.
Terry commented, thanks for the answer, super presentation. So you did well.
Maybe
Well, I enjoyed it because I'm pushing up there. A lot of us are. We're well above 60. Most of us are.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so remember the statistics, and that's the important thing. You know, we forget, because we have cataracts and we get our cataracts fixed. We have our arthritis in our hip. We get our hips repaired. You know, there are lots of things that we do. We forget about our heart. And it's just the same as the rest of the parts of our bodies. They start to fail. And unfortunately, when with Mary, as you saw, that could have been a fatal episode, and she could have died. And in fact, in my practice, it happened. You know, it happened a number of times where people died of something that was quite simple to solve. I mean, having a pacemaker inserted is not an operation. It's a daycare procedure, right? And it's not open heart surgery. It's a relatively simple procedure that's done, and it had amazing results, that could have affected her life. So we really want to pick that up. And the other one is atrial fibrillation is bad. You do not want to have atrial fibrillation. If you do have atrial fibrillation, you need to have your doctor monitor it and treat it. So again, you don't want to have a stroke. So a couple of things you need to be aware of.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, I will have this presentation probably up later on today, and I'll send you the link so you can watch it again, so you don't have to keep notes. All the information will be there. It'll be a YouTube video, and you can just play it later. Okay.
And also, before you leave the meeting, the chat will disappear. While Ron was talking, I put in links to an inexpensive iPhone. It's actually newer than the iPhone 11, $399. The Apple Watch, the Samsung Galaxy Active 2 watch, and then I did find the link on Amazon for the EKG Alive course. So if you want all that, save the chat. There's if you open up chat, there'll be a ... an ellipsis button at the bottom. Click that and choose Save Chat.
Okay. And have me back for part 2. Part 2 is even better.
Yeah, I want you back. I want to hear part 2.
Part 2 is even better. All right, you guys, I got to go and have lunch. I'm getting hungry.
Absolutely, and I do appreciate it. I fit the criteria you're talking about. So.
Ron, I see you tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow morning, Bob.
Thanks, Ron. Thank you very much.